borders certainly have been largely blamed for the influx of illegal immigrants into the country, the BMA now bringing in extra port guards. Now, they've also been blamed, though, for the ease, and this is very worrying, with which human trafficking and drug smuggling is taking place. Government agencies trying to step in, trying to step up to implement enhanced border surveillance. So that BMA, we just spoke about it now, a greater focus on trying to stop this from happening. But it all comes down to resources. It all comes down to money that is needed as well. The question you have to start wondering is, all of this extra work going into the borders, is it making much of a difference? Unmanned aerial vehicles even being used. Let me get the sense then of Daniel du Plessis, Marketing and Communications Director at Milkor. I hope I said the correct name. It's a global defense solutions provider. Daniel, good to have you with us. Did I say the company name correctly?
100%.
Thank you. Good to have you with us. I don't think you were able to hear BMA, the Border Management Authority. Big focus on Easter, but really there's a rest of the year we have to look for. The only way to describe this and our borders is porous, and that's probably putting it lightly.
I think you made a very fair point. I think that the function that the BMA at the moment have, their primary focus is for now being the Easter and the influx of people coming into the country and leaving the country. But there are much more serious concerns that are being addressed, and I think they have long-term plans. Dr. Masiapato has been engaging with industry players such as ourselves and various different government entities in facilitating a longer-term solution. And we've been fortunate to actually participate in those kind of discussions as well. And I do foresee that the BMA's role in preventing not just the land borders that we share with the neighboring countries, but also our coastal surveillance, pertaining specifically what you mentioned there to drug and human trafficking, is also a tremendous effort that's being made in securing that as well.
What I'm hearing from both of you now, the good doctor and yourself, is surveillance and intelligence. Let's start with surveillance. With that, I imagine, comes a lot of technology. Are we moving in the right direction? Do we have the tech toys to help us?
Thank you so much. And I think that's a very big focus point for us as a company, and it's one of the primary focus points that we are the leader in this industry, specifically in the African continent. Surveillance opportunities and the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, such as the Milkor 380, which is a fully South African developed UAV capability.
It's a drone, isn't it?
It's essentially a drone, okay. and it has the capability of flying for 35 hours, so doing continuous surveillance engagements and flying for more than 2,000 kilometers. So for issues specifically pertaining to porous borders and border crossings, these types of surveillance equipment is the primary use of it. And it is something that should be implemented right throughout the African continent, but especially in our home country as well.
How easily accessible? Oh, there it is. I'm very sorry. I thought it was a drone. It actually is like a small aircraft without a pilot. Okay, now I understand what you're talking about.
It's quite large.
It is quite large. That's not a drone at all. So what does that technology look for? I mean, I understand there's obviously IP and there's secrets you can't give away. But what would the focus of that actually be, and how does that feed back to the BMA?
That's a very good question. I think it's actually a wider question than that. Yeah. The use of these drones are multi-purpose, and they can be used for various different type of surveillance, reconnaissance, and intelligence gathering operations. That includes video footage surveillance. It also includes synthetic aperture radar surveillance, which uses very high spectrum radar technologies that can actually produce a map and recognize patterns within the specific borders. It also has communications and intelligence gathering sensors on board that allows you to intercept various different phone calls and things like that it could be implemented for. And the beauty of this product is that all of the electronics have been developed in Cape Town. We have more than 3 different facilities, more than 300 engineers that are working specifically on this project. And it has the capability to, within a 250 kilometer radius, send real-time information to not just one entity like the BMA, but to many different entities within the government and the security cluster.
And that takes us very nicely from the surveillance part, which clearly you seem to have covered, from surveillance onto intelligence, because that's where that information goes, not just reacting to a potential crime or a potential incursion. I imagine the idea is to actually stop it from happening in the first place.
I think you made a very fair point. I think if we look at the July unrests in Durban a few years back, There was a lot of intel that was gathered that could have been used to prevent it. And if more capabilities was incorporated within the government structure and the various defense and security clusters involved in that, it would have been possible to actually prevent an unrest such as that. So you're very right in saying that the intelligence part of this type of technology is very much in existence in South Africa, and I think it's something that we are not very well known with. First world and well-developed countries have been using drone technologies for the past few decades, and for a long while South Africa has lacked the capability to have a drone of this class to be used across multiple different platforms for various different operations, and we have established that.
Forgive me if I turn into a bit of a nerd here. I didn't realize that's the kind of drones we're talking about. So locally made, local geniuses behind this as well. What about the skill set to fly something like this? It's one thing to have, all your high-end cameras, but you need trained people behind those screens looking at certain patterns, looking at certain objects, and knowing when something is wrong that they need to try and flag. Who's involved in that? Where do those people come from?
So I'll try and keep it short. I think it's a very long question and a very deep answer, but I'll try and keep it as short as possible. So South Africa has a rich history of using unmanned aerial vehicles from a very long time back. They were purely used for surveillance operations. Back then, the technology was very limited. So that is a big advantage that we have in today's modern day. We have the benefit of artificial intelligence and pattern recognition software that could easily detect and identify objects on the ground, even as far as 6 kilometers above ground. So that is one asset that the software actually helps your operators tremendously. The other asset is that there are many skilled individuals that have been working on these systems for more than 4 decades, and they are residing within our company at the moment and have the capability to not only operate this, but also retrain additional pilots and operators.
Which means it's not going to fall away in a couple of years when they go on to retirement. Just very, very quickly, this system that we're showing here that we're talking about, we were talking about Easter weekend with BMA. Is this an air now? Are you allowed to tell me? Is it functional? Is it operated?
So it's not functional with the BMA at the moment.
Okay.
No, we are still undergoing some testing and verifications with this program. There's a long, rigorous program that has to be used. It is confined to military airspace at the moment. In later future, possibly within the next year, we are hoping that this piece of equipment can be implemented on a civilian basis.
Fascinating. Daniel, thank you for coming in and talking to me. I didn't realize we were as high-tech as that, and I suppose that's why I had you come in to show me how little I knew about this. My biggest thanks to Daniel du Plessis, Marketing and Communications Director at Milkor, Global Defense Solutions Provider. You can see they've got the tech, they've got the toys. Now we've got to convert that to intelligence as well.